When Kevin Durant made the unexpected decision to leave a dynasty team in the Golden State Warriors in the summer of 2019 to join the Brooklyn Nets, it was believed that by him simply joining the team, the Nets would be considered contenders in the NBA, at least when he returned back from his Achilles injury. You see, despite knowing Kevin Durant would likely be out for the entire 2019-20 season, the Nets were willing to take on that risk in the hopes of landing one of the best players in the world, a superstar and a future Hall of Famer. And the Nets didn't stop there. They wanted to beef up their roster even further and subsequently decided to sign Kyrie Irving as a free agent, having just ended his contract with the Boston Celtics. A duo of Kyrie and KD would instantly make this team title contenders, especially with the budding young talent they had developing at the time in Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert, and Spencer Dinwiddie. And while this team was pretty average in that first season with Kevin Durant being out, Kyrie Irving only playing 20 games that entire year, the season suspended due to the pandemic and then having the bubble, the Nets made the playoffs, but they were swept by the Raptors in the first round. The Nets went on to fire then head coach Kenny Atkinson and hired first-time head coach Steve Nash. And when the following season began, Kevin Durant was healthy, Kyrie Irving was back, although he missed again a considerable amount of time that season. The Nets still needed some additional firepower. And with things falling apart with the relationship between James Harden and the Houston Rockets, the Nets made an all-in push to turn this team into title favorites, clear title favorites. Hell, even put them on the precipice of the next NBA dynasty. They took a huge risk in trading for a 31-year-old James Harden by way of a 4-team trade in which they gave up Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert, and traded away 7 first-round picks between picks and pick swaps to get, again, a 31-year-old James Harden, mortgaging their entire future. But they had arguably the best offensive big three the game of basketball had ever seen. But as great as the idea seemed and looked on paper, the moves ultimately led to one of the biggest disappointments in the history of sports, and just 3.5 years later, the Big Three was dismantled, having one playoff series win to show for it. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a video, and in return I'll be providing you guys more NBA content like this all season long. Now, it should be noted that no team, no matter how well they are constructed, no matter the level of elite players they have on it, is never a surefire guaranteed championship team. Injuries happen, the fit doesn't allow for consistent winning, the team chemistry and culture could hinder their success, but this was a team that was damn near close to be considered at least one guaranteed championship in their tenure. The Big Three of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, along with their depth and quality role players that the Nets had on their team at that time, you could argue was better than the KD, Steph, Clay, Warriors championship teams. Even if the fit wasn't great, even if the egos clashed, the thought was that the talent would just be too good to not win a championship. Well, that couldn't have been further from the case. So what happened? How could this seemingly all-time great trio have fallen so far below expectations and didn't even manage to make it beyond 3 seasons playing together? Well, the answer might surprise you, as it's not as clear-cut as you might think. You see, while so many factors led to this team's downfall, and we shouldn't absolve anyone for their failed attempt at creating a title team, Kyrie Irving sitting out games for religious reasons or being forced to sit due to his refusal to get the COVID vaccine, whether you agree or disagree with his right to get vaccinated, the fact of the matter is that was a statewide and New York mandate that the league had to comply with. And of course, it didn't help that Kyrie also had to miss significant time due to injury. And then of course, James Harden, not playing like the MVP level player they had expected he would be from his days in Houston, and making it apparent from just a few months on the roster that he just didn't really enjoy playing there, to Steve Nash not being the right coach to manage the egos and organize an offensive system around 3 elite level offensive players, to the ownership and front office being perceived as creating this toxic culture among the organization. While all this is true, and yes, certainly led to the Nets' downfall, it cannot be understated the role Kevin Durant had in the disaster that came of this team. Kevin Durant left the Golden State Warriors to show the rest of the league and its fans that he was the best player in the world. He wanted to prove that he could win a title on his own team, that he just didn't simply take the easy route and join a 73-win Warrior team that he blew a 3-1 lead to. Like, even though he was the best player on that Warriors team, he won the Finals MVP twice in those 2 championships, not Steph. At the end of the day, everyone knew it was still Steph's team. And everyone knew what Kevin Durant did in leaving Oklahoma City to go play with the Warriors was a weak move on his part. So by going to the Nets, he wanted to make this his team. Sure, adding Kyrie was great, but no one would ever say that Kyrie is better than Kevin Durant. And when KD watched and observed in that first season on the sidelines while he recovered from that Achilles injury, he let the front office know that Kenny Atkinson wasn't the guy to lead this team to a championship, and instead handpicked Steve Nash to run the team, who was not equipped to be coaching in the NBA right out of the gate as a head coach, especially not a team that is expected to win now. And then when the Nets traded for James Harden, a deal Kevin Durant pushed for, and trading away their whole future, KD was then upset about James Harden and his work ethic. The fact that he was out of shape, the fact that he wasn't playing like he used to. And then on top of that, James Harden couldn't stay healthy as well. He was in and out of the lineup and didn't last long before Harden was included in trade rumors and was ultimately moved after not even finishing 2 seasons with the team and only playing 80 games in total with the Nets. Now, the trade the Nets made for Harden was, in its own way, a disaster in taking on the Ben Simmons contract, not getting much in the way of draft capital in return, only 2 first-round picks, and Seth Curry and Andre Drummond, who they ended up not re-signing anyway, and Drummond that is. But that bad trade aside, it was the ensuing offseason that really led to the Nets' undoing. The Nets, after having disappointed majorly, finishing as the 7th seed in the playoffs, and then getting swept by the Celtics despite the fact that at that time KD was fully healthy and Kyrie was able to play the entire series as the vaccine mandate had been lifted. And because of how poorly the Nets played, especially when Kevin Durant was out due to injury during the regular season, the Nets fell off a cliff when he went down, dropping from 2nd to 9th in the standings over that time period. But because it was starting to become clear that this team as constructed, after losing James Harden and with the uncertainty around Kyrie and how available he would be in the lineup, that this team wasn't going to be a championship caliber level team that Kevin Durant had envisioned. As such, Kevin Durant requested a trade. This was even after the fact that Kyrie opted into the final year of his deal, even after he postured a bit, making it seem like he was going to opt out for free agency until he realized not a lot of teams wanted him after not playing much that season. Kevin Durant asks out, the Nets don't move him. He then gives an ultimatum. It's either me or the coach and GM, Sean Marks. Either you fire them or I don't stay. Listen, Kevin Durant is a baller. He's one of the greatest players in the league. He's an all-time great, a first ballot Hall of Famer. But the man had the audacity to say, if you want me, you need to fire the coach and the GM. You're under contract, dude. You signed an agreement with this team to play. And I'm all for player empowerment. I think it's great the league has started trending more in that direction. But you can't sit there and demand a coach and a GM to be fired, otherwise you're out. Not when you just signed a contract extension. That ultimatum really led to the Nets' demise. I know Kevin Durant and the front office and ownership eventually came to an agreement that he would stay, they would work things out and run it back with Kyrie Irving, but the damage had already been done. Like at that point, KD and Kyrie had no loyalty or desire to want to remain with the organization in the front office, and owner Joe Tsai knew that. The writing was on the wall. This team wasn't going to last. Steve Nash ends up getting fired after a lackluster start by the Nets, but what's crazy is that the Nets actually started playing well together under Jacques Vaughn. Hell, I made a video about how the Nets completely turned their season around, how the Nets were back and starting to look like a legitimate title contender. They went on a 12-game winning streak, went from being 9-11 to 27-13 in the standings, a play-in team to the 2nd seed in the East. But then, Kevin Durant got injured again, and the losses started piling up. And then, of course, the tipping point. The botched contract extension negotiations by the Nets that led to Kyrie Irving demanding a trade. They move him in a trade 48 hours later, which of course by that point Kevin Durant knew this isn't going to be the team that I signed up for and not where I want to be at this stage in my career. He's not about being on a team that is on a path to rebuilding, which leads to just a few days later, Kevin Durant being traded to the Phoenix Suns. Now, I talked about this in my last video, how I actually think the Nets made out pretty well considering they were really forced into a situation where they needed to trade both of these players. They got a decent return for both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and got rid of this toxic culture they had created and started fresh with young up-and-coming players and with draft assets to build with for the future. Now, Kevin Durant, because I by no means am putting all the blame on him for why the Nets became one of the biggest disappointments in the history of sports. Like I mentioned, there was plenty of blame to go around. But the difference for Kevin Durant compared to Kyrie, James Harden, the front office, ownership, is that this is what Kevin Durant wanted. He wanted to have this be his own team. He wanted to have a big say in how the team was constructed. He wanted to prove to everyone that he could be the leader, the guy on a championship team. He wanted all of this. And see, when you're one of the best players in the game and you want to be a leader, you have to take all those challenges and trials that come with it. Kevin Durant was supposed to be the leader of this team. He was supposed to be that voice in the locker room that pumps the team up, that fixes team chemistry issues, a player the team looks to and wants to emulate. As a leader, he's supposed to be above all of the drama and remain focused on the prize at hand. And Kevin Durant wasn't that. He wasn't the leader of that ball club and was instead part of the problem that led to a toxic environment in the locker room. And then the other piece is Kevin Durant wasn't available as you would expect him to be. Obviously, a player can't control injuries, but missing so many games during his Nets tenure did not help the situation, as he was supposed to be that team leader and best player who more often than not was watching from the bench. So I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this assessment, and I'll likely get some heat for it in the comments, but I truly believe that a big reason for why the Nets disappointed and fell so short of their expectations is because of Kevin Durant, his ego, and lack of leadership. But I would love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.